What happens when the walls you've carefully built between ambition and desire start to crumble? And when the person you're supposed to keep at a professional distance becomes the one you can't stop thinking about? Welcome to a story not just about a party or a romantic spark, but about the emotional chaos that unfolds when power, admiration, and attraction collide in a place where they shouldn't, the workplace. James had finally arrived. His first solo apartment, no roommates, no compromises. A milestone many 20-somethings chase, achieved with sweat and late-night overtime. This wasn't just about walls and furniture. This was about identity, freedom, control. To celebrate, he threw a party, friends, drinks, music, and one unexpected RSVP. Mr. Grant, his charismatic and sharply dressed boss. And that's where things got complicated. But let's pause here, because what you're about to hear isn't just one man's night of temptation. It's a mirror for deeper questions. What happens when admiration turns into attraction? When professional respect starts blurring into personal longing? And most importantly, how do you navigate the emotional fallout when you realize your life just shifted on its axis? Let's unpack this. James moved through his party, the consummate host, but always aware of Mr. Grant's presence. There's something magnetic about people in power. Psychology even has a term for it: status attraction. We're wired to gravitate toward those who seem to have it all: competence, confidence, presence. And Mr. Grant had all of that. Even his compliments seemed loaded. A casual, "Nice place, James," carried the weight of intimacy. When he mentioned James didn't need to keep the formalities, it wasn't just a throwaway line, it was a subtle shift in dynamic. "We're not at the office anymore" was more than small talk. It was a license to relax boundaries. Think back to your own life. Have you ever felt that pull, that strange mix of admiration and longing when someone older, more experienced, or in a position of influence shows you attention? It's thrilling, it's validating, and yes, it's dangerous. When James walked into the bedroom for more ice and found Mr. Grant there, it was the perfect cinematic beat. But in real life, that moment is messy, complicated, a mix of adrenaline and anxiety. Mr. Grant's shirt was partially undone, his stance relaxed. He claimed he just needed air, but his eyes said something else. And then came the charge line: "It's not quiet I'm after." It's in moments like this that consent becomes foggy, power dynamics murky. Who holds the power here? The boss, obviously. But what about the person who wants that power dynamic? James was torn. Between protocol and passion, between his job and his feelings. This is the emotional truth rarely discussed. Sometimes we don't want to say no, but we know we probably should. Let me pause and tell you about Eli, a real-life marketing intern who once confided in me during a workshop. He shared how his supervisor would often compliment his ideas, then text him outside work hours. At first, it felt encouraging, but when she started inviting him to one-on-one brainstorm dinners, the lines blurred. Eli wasn't sure if he was special or being tested. When they kissed one night after drinks, he felt both exhilarated and betrayed. Why betrayed? Because he realized his professional progress was tied to something emotional he didn't fully consent to. This isn't just about one man and his boss. This happens everywhere, in startups, in nonprofits, in universities, and it leaves people emotionally wrecked, unsure if what they experienced was romance or manipulation. James and Mr. Grant eventually kissed. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional catharsis, a release of everything unsaid. But here's the thing about emotional release: it doesn't fix anything. Afterward, James felt lost, empowered for a moment, then hollow. And when he woke up alone with a note from Mr. Grant, that hollow turned into heartbreak. Here's where we talk about emotional aftercare, something sorely missing in modern hookup culture. We prepare ourselves for intimacy, but not for the emotional consequences. The next day, everything was off. At work, Mr. Grant was cold, professional again. Their moment was erased, scrubbed clean by fluorescent lighting and coffee machines. When he finally called James into the office and said, it was a mistake, it was like a rug being pulled out from under a fragile emotional truth. That's the paradox. Mr. Grant wanted him, but couldn't have him. Not without risking reputation, career, maybe even legal complications. In James, he was left with memories and questions and zero closure. It's a familiar story, isn't it? Because in real life, most relationships don't end with dramatic declarations. They end in offices, behind closed doors, with quiet apologies and unreadable expressions. So what can we take from James's story? Attraction is not consent. Power dynamics complicate everything, even genuine feelings. Emotional consequences matter. A kiss isn't just a kiss when your job or self-worth is involved. We need to talk more about gray areas. Not every inappropriate relationship is abusive, but that doesn't make it healthy. The next time you're drawn to someone in a position of power, or are that person, ask yourself, am I willing to handle the storm that may follow this spark? Because once you cross the line, there's no going back. James sat quietly at his desk, eyes fixed on the screen, but his mind was miles away. Everything seemed normal, but nothing felt normal. The familiar sounds of the office, keyboards clicking, printers humming, phones ringing, now sounded distant, like echoes from a life that no longer fit. No matter how much he tried to focus, James couldn't ignore the occasional glance from Mr. Grant. Fleeting, restrained, but loaded. It was no longer the gaze of a boss toward an employee. It carried the weight of regret, longing, and something else, something unspoken. That night, James returned to his apartment. No guests, no music, no distractions, just him, and the deafening noise of his own thoughts. Standing in front of his mirror, staring into his own reflection, a hard question surfaced. They met at a quiet cafe tucked away behind the busy city streets, a place meant for honest conversations, not corporate meetings. Mr. Grant was already there. Today, he wasn't the perfectly composed executive. His white shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hair slightly tousled, and his eyes carried the fatigue of someone who'd spent the night wrestling with himself. As James walked away from that cafe, his mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. He couldn't let his life orbit around someone else's desire, or even his own confusion. It was time to take back control. A week later, James submitted a request to transfer to another department. Not to run away, but to create the space both of them needed. Space to breathe, space to heal, space to redefine themselves separately. On his final afternoon under Mr. Grant's supervision, they crossed paths in the elevator. No words, just a glance. But in that glance, everything was said.